We are good. Just going to get the live going here. All right. Okay. All right. I think we're live now. Hello, everyone. In my usual style, better late than never. So we got some good things that we're going to talk about today, and I'm not sure, I might start doing like two different lives. One of the challenges that I have is that I have different topics that I want to talk about in the morning, and then come evening, I want to talk about more personal stuff. So and then like in the morning it's more business kind of oriented, but today's training is going to be a little bit more business oriented, and we're going to talk about some aspects of narcissism in the workplace. For those of you who are just joining me for the very first time, my name is Tina. I'm a happiness coach, and I help people go from being in a dark, depressed, anxious kind of state, feeling dark thoughts, to being happy. And I do this by helping people by sharing my experience, strength, and hope on this live. I'm giving examples from my real life experience of things that I've done in my professional environment and my personal environment as well. For those of you that don't know, you may look at me and think, hey, I'm well put together and everything, but my past experience, my childhood, what I grew up in, if you take the ACEs test, which is adverse childhood conditions or experiences, I score a 10 out of 10, which is not something that you want to get perfect on. You do not want perfect on that test, but I have perfect on that one. So, but nobody would ever realize that. But there were behaviors in me, even though I had done a lot of healing work, even though I had done a lot of therapy, that continue to follow me in my corporate job. And it has impacts both on me personally, and it had impacts on the business professionally. So these things can end up costing your business money. And this is why I want to talk about this a little bit, because some of my background is change management and all of that kind of stuff. And because of the therapy, because of the people skills, and the ability to deal with challenging situations and still remain calm in the face of that, I was often given, what I like to call the hell gig clients. So I would have to deal with those kind of challenging situations, the people that didn't trust, that were, very difficult to deal with, that made everybody else want to, scream. And those were the ones that I got to wrangle. It's kind of like, taming feral cats, which I'm also good at that too. So that's a whole pet rescue thing that I can talk about another time. So today we're going to talk about various aspects of narcissistic type traits, and I'm not going to dive into all of them today, and I'm not going to list all of them. You can feel free to look those up. But I want to talk about, there was this one boss that I had, and he was a manager, and he always had this like saying, he said it jokingly, and don't get me wrong, the stuff that I'm telling, he was a good manager, I liked him, I loved working with him, and these are just narcissistic traits. I'm not saying that he was a narcissist. I don't know that, I'm not qualified to diagnose that. And plus, I don't believe in those full labels anyway. I believe people are capable of changing. And I know they say that narcissists can't change. And I'm like, I think they can. But then again, I'm probably delusional, but that's okay. Considering I tend to be on the other end of the spectrum of being empathetic and, not always the most healthy empath. Sometimes I'm pretty good. And I'm getting better every day. So anyway, this guy, he had a saying that he liked to say, it's good to be king. And so he had this real mindset of that, very top-down management style. What he said was law, and nobody else had a say in it. Do you have any advice on how to get rid of my good husband who got my car repossessed? So that would be a little bit more of an online conversation, hun. But I would say, if I'm going to answer that question, so you got your car repossessed. Do you have any paperwork, that kind of stuff? What kind of legal stuff do you have the ability to deal with on that? I would look at that. I wouldn't react emotionally. I would try and keep it logical, even though he's doing this to try and get an emotional rise out of you. So not reacting to that is going to be key. And just sticking to the facts, right? Because if he's doing this, he's trying to get a rise out of you, you don't want to react to that kind of things emotionally. Just deal with it. It's like, okay, this is a problem. What paperwork, what legal stuff do I have to be able to get it? If he's done it so that you cannot actually change anything legally and he's got the upper hand in that way, then find a different way to solve your problem where he's not involved. So I don't know if that kind of helps a little bit. That's a quick way for me to kind of answer it, but I would have to talk with you a little bit more in order to understand. So let me know if that helped, Jennifer. Was it Jennifer? Sorry, the chat is going pretty fast here. So hopefully that helped, okay? So I'm going to go through the training and then we'll save some questions for the end. But if you do have questions, let me know. Okay, so he had this very top-down approach. And in fact, when he was hiring me, he told me one of the reasons there was another girl that he was looking to hire, but he didn't like her because she was too aggressive in the interview. And I was like, that should have been my first sign. But because I come across as much softer, and more pliable and easygoing, I got the job. So kudos for that, right? But the thing is I appear very soft. I've got a soft voice, so people think that I'm very sweet and timid and all that kind of stuff. But when I get to that point, it takes a long time to get me to that point, but I will hold you accountable. And it's actually harder. It's actually harder because somebody who flies off the handle and is really tough and aggressive comes in like guns a-blazing kind of thing. Those kind of women are actually very easy to control because you can guilt them because they're being too aggressive. Whereas me, it's like, no, I've monitored my emotions. I've kept them good. I've cleared my side of the street. So when it comes down to it and you're going to attack me for something, then if I did it wrong, I first of all will admit it's wrong and I will correct my side. I always focus on correcting my side. This is what doing the emotional work will allow you to do. You don't react when somebody gives you that feedback. If you do, it's something that you believe about yourself. But if you're like, no, I can actually do better, it's something that's very easy. It's like, oh shit, yeah, you know what? I'll fix that. You know, I'll get that right. Especially if you're good-hearted and you're kind-natured to begin with. So when somebody calls something out, the natural reaction, if you're a good person, is you want to fix the mistake. It's only when we are afraid and we haven't done the healing inner work that we get defensive, we get fearful, we try to hide, we try to cover up, we do all that kind of crazy shit. And you don't want to do that, right? You know, look at a kid. If you catch them where they've done something wrong and then they'll try to lie about it, adults do that too. If they know they did wrong, a lot of times they'll go and hide about that. One of the things I've always been praised about in a work environment is, and I remember this guy, he was a Marine too, his name was Don, and way back in the day, he actually said, one thing that I love about you, Tita, is that if something goes wrong, you're the first one to come telling us that you did something wrong, rather than us trying to have to find out. You never try to cover it up. You never try to hide it. And it's like, oh, that's actually a good quality. I turn myself in before anybody else has a chance to try and turn me in, right? So, so going back to the concept of good to be king, right? And while I do believe in leadership and hierarchy and stuff like that, that you have to have some level of respect and everything, there are some things that go with leadership. Here, I'm just switching out my cards. I got them out of order here. So there's, and I started to learn a little bit about this because when you are less mature as a leader, it tends to be easier to default to a fear-based leadership style. And I was guilty of this as well, right? And this is the good to be king mentality, right? Where you have everybody else looking up to you, that you are the strongest. If you have, and let's just do a little thing here. I'm gonna write on the board. Let's see if this works. So, I really need to stop using the hand cream before I come on these lives. All right. So a fear-based leadership style is you got the guy on top, I'm the best, I'm the greatest, and then you've got all the people down here looking up to them, going, I can never be like that. They are the greatest, they are the best, they are the fastest, all of that kind of stuff. Good to be king. So you have that kind of leadership style. And what happens with this kind of leadership style, and how this can cost your business money, is that if they're looking at the leader as the only one that's capable, the only one that is strong enough to make the decision, the only one that is able to battle through things. Hey, Rico. The people down below are going to be hesitant. They're not going to be empowered in order to be able to make decisions on their own. And you're going to be left with having to do micromanaging type techniques where you're always needed. You're always present in being around, right? So also with this, everybody wants to take you off of this position. They want to prove that they're stronger. So you've always got competition. You've got people trying to knock you off your throne kind of thing, right? And everybody wants the Iron Throne. And then there's all kinds of problems that happen there, right? So the look at me, I am the strongest, I am the best. And oftentimes, one of the hiring practices that happens in a business is they'll take their best A player that is really good at getting super results and they're amazing and everything, and they are leaps and bounds ahead of everybody. I've been guilty of this too. And then they promote them and put them in charge of people. But they're really good at the skills and they're good at the stuff, but they're not good at the people skills. Ask me how I know. I didn't realize that people had different ways of learning, and I expected everybody to perform at my level. And when they didn't, I got really mean about it. So I'm not saying this because I'm, perfect or anything. I know I've failed a lot, and this is how I have my wisdom, right? So this is earned. And and I remember getting called out on it, like when I first started out, and it's like, I was always the one jumping in, always giving the answers, and I didn't realize, like, I was just trying to be first. I didn't realize that that was having an effect on other people, that was disempowering other people by me doing that kind of stuff. So I had to start learning a more empowering leadership style, where I'm at the bottom and everybody else is feeling like they are stronger than me. They should feel stronger than me. They're the ones that are putting in the fucking work. I'm the one that's actually overseeing things, trying to help them out, trying to guide them, making sure they have the tools, the resources available to them to be able to perform their jobs the best. So when this happens, if you take me out of the equation, guess what? These guys are still going to do the work. They already know that they can do it. Why? Because I've empowered them to be able to have all the tools they need to be able to do the jobs that they are able to do. they don't need me. They know that they are the ones with the power to actually change things. And they also come up with the solutions. It is a very, very different style. And if you default to an older style, like it's good to be king, you're going to be crumbling, because people nowadays, they do not want to put up with this BS, because you know what? High performers, that's the other thing. You're going to attract low performing employees in this. High performers, they expect their voice to be heard. They expect their thoughts and their viewpoints to be considered. And guess what? Everybody, if they have good self-esteem, should also feel the same way. The problem is that makes it a little bit challenging, because if you've got 30 people on your team and everybody has a voice, well, you don't have time to hear all that. So people tend to start defaulting to this way. You're just going to do it my way. And that starts causing problems, and that starts causing bad feelings within the work environment. People don't feel appreciated. And guess which ones are the first to go? The first ones to say, fuck you, I'm out of here, are going to be the ones that are actually good. Those are the ones that are be like, no, I've had enough. I'm going to go find someplace else. I'm going to go be an entrepreneur online. I'm going to go do these other things because I know I have the capability and I deserve better. So this is why fear-based leadership, although it seems like it gets you fast results, it's very short term, and eventually things will crumble, and then you will find out that you have a toxic environment, and the people that you're left with are the ones that really do not want to grow, do not want to evolve. So now you can't promote from within, because, or it's going to be a long training cycle to try and get those people up to speed. So if you don't bend, you end up breaking, right? So another thing that I've seen small businesses do that is a bit of a stupid hiring practice. So take a mid-sized company, and we had applications from companies that were like Fortune 500 employees that, like, you know, they got laid off, they were hired, they were looking to be hired on for different roles. Some were managers and stuff like that at these Fortune 500 companies. And I remember I was a new supervisor at the time, and I was told, you know what, absolutely don't hire any people from this company. And I'm like, well, why? They have the skills. They're looking for work. Like, why can't I look at bringing those people on? And again, it's the good to be king kind of style leadership. They didn't want anybody that was too aggressive. Now, this is where it starts going into some narcissistic traits, because narcissists don't want anybody to be above them, and they end up being the lid of their leadership, right? They end up being the stopping block. And so I wasn't allowed to hire good people and potentially bring those in, because the thing is when you have somebody that has worked in one of those big Fortune 500 companies, and they have exposure to all kinds of business practices that, like, you're not even aware of, and it's like, it's just so much better, so much, they have, their base level of knowledge is so much higher than somebody that's at a high level in a mid-sized company, right? So even a low-end employee usually has more ideas that they can contribute to the growth of a mid-sized company. But oftentimes ego starts getting in the way, and it prevents people from actually being able to listen, to hear, to adapt, and to change to new ideas, right? Because they're too busy wanting to be king, and that prevents them from taking that information in. And unfortunately, they end up losing out on potential where they could help grow their company a lot faster, a lot better, if they actually had this kind of style of leadership where it's bottom up, where the people are actually empowered to contribute, to make the decisions, to decide how things are going to be solved within the company, rather than the top down. Whereas the leader in this kind of method actually provides the support. And this is a very change management style of leadership as well, where the leaders would bring in the VPs, the presidents of the company on change management projects. They'd say, like, this is what we want done. Here are the roadblocks that we can't change, these particular criteria. But here are the problems, and this is the goal that we're trying to get to. You guys figure it out, right? And we'd go through and we'd workshop how we're going to break that down, what all the challenges are, and then putting systems and action plans into place and then following through with those. The first one that I went through, it was a few months and we saved over $400,000 in transportation costs. We also broke down the barriers of being able to achieve some of the objectives that we hadn't been able to achieve in a couple of years, that there were system challenges, process challenges, people challenges that all needed to be addressed and dealt with. And if we didn't have that kind of leadership style where it was, hey, we're not going to make those decisions, we're going to empower you guys to make those decisions, that's a healthy work environment. Whereas that top-down is a bit more toxic. And nowadays, I hear a lot of companies complaining they can't find good help. They can't get good people. The people that they have are not willing to work hard. They, all these kind of things. And I'm like, there's good and bad for all of it. And I'm not talking about coming in and just like coddling everybody. It's about empowering people, and when they are happy, they feel heard, they feel valued, they actually perform a whole lot better. They will perform whether you're there or not, and they will stay longer so you don't lose that knowledge base that they have, right? Because losing an employee, especially a good one that has good heart, good integrity, is actually a huge cost to your business, right? And even if it's just that person's skill set and leaves, the impact of that good person leaving on the rest of the team really has an impact on them as well, because they were probably a go-to person. They were probably somebody that was looked up on, respected. And when that person leaves, it does give an opportunity for somebody else to step into that role. But there's also a bit of demoralization of the team that ends up happening, and they feel uncertain, because if this person that was a high performer couldn't actually get beyond a certain point, couldn't get things solved with management, what chance do the people that can't articulate, can't argue, can't do things, what chance do they have at being able to get through? So it starts planting seeds of doubt within the remaining team that is left behind. So this is where you want to be careful. And then the thing is if you do have somebody that has narcissistic traits and they don't want other people to get beyond them, then the next person that starts to rise, they're going to beat that person down too. And it's going to be a repeated pattern. So and then you may wonder why either you're losing people or, there's certain challenges, because I know I've been with companies too where all of a sudden there was like a whole wave of employees, because it's like, hey, when one finally stands up and says, that's it, I'm out, I'm done, I'm not doing this, this is toxic, then you'll end up having other good employees that end up leaving too, because they see what's possible. So it's important to start to be able to address these issues internally and finding ways to work this out within your company. Or you could end up having hidden costs of your people are not happy, but they may put on a happy face, because if you're around a narcissist and you show that you're miserable, then they punish you for that too. So, and this can happen even in a big company, and you have different departments. So you can't whitewash the whole company. So I was fortunate. I was in a company where I had a good environment. But I saw a lot of toxic ones around me. And because of that, I also didn't want to move around the company, even though I had more skill sets to contribute to the company. But I didn't see any place I wanted to grow because of the toxic behavior. So what ended up happening is I couldn't grow within my team. I still wanted to grow. I had to leave. So that's kind of what ends up happening as well. And these are subtle things that you can't measure with a KPI. But if you start seeing patterns, you have people leaving and they're good people and you're like, what happened? And I'm not saying that you automatically blame the manager. Sometimes it could be peer-to-peer toxicity that's happening as well too, that ends up causing somebody to leave. And these things all cost your business money, and they prevent your business from growing at the scale and the level that you want them to, okay? So, leadership. So the good to be king, oftentimes they don't read the fine print of leadership, because you're going to be mocked, you're going to be ridiculed, you're going to be betrayed, you're going to be talked down to, set up, sabotaged, all those kind of things. But true leaders are there to serve the people. And when you are a servant leader, those people will not turn on you that way. They will stick up for you. They will have your back. Even when everybody else is saying that that person is a fucking asshole and they're terrible, da 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 da, that person's still going to stick up to you, stick up for you, right? So when you, and they can tell, they can feel that difference. So even if on the surface it looks like everything is like, oh, this person screwed me over, I would know, I would trust, and I would know the difference of when somebody is actually doing that versus when they're not. And when you have that anchored in, that's a huge difference, okay? So your good people will not betray you, even if it looks like you screwed them over, because they know the difference. And for myself, it's like, you know, I remember the first time I went through like a round of layoffs and everything, and I was like so afraid, which was silly because it's like, and I started to joke around eventually, and like, yeah, they don't fire me. It's like, I would never be able to get packaged off. You know, I always had to leave a job. And it's like, yeah. And I used to joke, I'm like, slaves have to be sold, right? It's like, that's terrible, that's a horrible, it's probably not politically correct that I just said that. So anyway, see some of my past coming out. I know some of this toxicity because I was that. And now you can do the healing work, right? So as a leader, you have to be willing to be crucified, to do the work, and to be able to carry the cross. Hey, Zook, nice to see you. Nice that you came back. Welcome, welcome. So, you know, God's going to put stuff on your heart, and it's going to be scary because it's like, it's not fun to be a leader. Like, hell no, no, wait, that's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of work. And oftentimes I end up getting gravitated towards it, not because that's something I'm setting out to do. I'm perfectly fine with being in the background, and yet I get dragged out. But I've also been very, very good at being able to help that leadership because I'm not afraid of them, and I see them as fairly equal. Like, not that in a disrespectful way, like I respect that they have knowledge and skills and stuff like that. I respect their authority and stuff like that. But for me, it's like I also am understanding, and I'm a safe person that they could talk to whatever way that they need to talk to me about. So I have had some VPs, I've had very high up people that just vent and they just want to rage, and then they get scared afterwards because they're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have actually said that. Why did I tell you all that stuff? And I'm like, it's okay, it's not going anywhere. Right? You know, so because I have the capacity to listen and support and be able to help people like that, and it doesn't faze me, and I'm like, and people are surprised by that because they see me as softer, they see me as timid. But I guess this is one of the benefits of the trauma. I'm like, I've had a gun to my face. You yelling at me isn't going to faze me. I'm sorry, it doesn't scare me. In fact, it usually amuses me. In fact, there was this one speaker, Dan Pena. he was speaking and he was like raging and everything. And there was a guy at the table that I was at, and he's kind of like, oh my God, like this guy is too much. And I'm like sitting there giggling. I find it funny because, you know, I see the principle of what he's talking about. I'm like, oh, you're actually right. I agree with that. And I can get behind it. I wouldn't take his approach. I have a different process for getting there. I can't pull that off as well as he can, but he can do that whole rage thing. But I have this other approach. So we have the same values. I agree on the points that he was talking on. And it's always surprising to me because it's like, I actually agree with him. I don't agree with his methodology and how he does that, and that's not how I would approach it. However, I agree with the value of it. I agree with the value of hard work and, you know, discipline and structure and all those kind of things. However, that's not always my approach. My approach is more on the feminine side, that is more nurturing, more caring and stuff like that. And there's a good balance to that kind of stuff. So when we look at like this kind of leadership, in some ways you actually need both. Okay, so the bottom down, which is a more nurture style. And then you have the top, which is, these guys are all about structure, my way or the highway kind of thing. And this is all about nurturing, caring, you know, worrying about the people. The thing is I think we actually need a balance. And this is kind of like a whole yin and yang kind of thing that ends up happening. And I think having the approach of both, the challenge is having those type of people be able to get along and be able to respect the different approaches and the value of those different approaches, right? And bringing those in. So I want to tell a little bit of a story. So a lot of my background is in transport and logistics. I've worked with a lot of military people because I worked with a US company, so they gravitate to the logistics and they're very good at it. Really great, hardworking guys. I love it. And there's pros and cons to the military style. Very structured, SOPs, there's a certain process, certain way. However, they forget that they are elite. They forget that they are military, and the majority of average workers are not that caliber. So you need somebody like me that is kind of, you know, a little bit more understanding, nurturing, can handle the C and the B players and help them rise up to those levels. It takes a bit longer, it takes a lot more patience, but these other guys, they get really fucking frustrated and they blow up, and then I usually had to come in with my, you know, white and black striped shirt and whistle, kind of calling timeout referee. And how did I do that? Is because I was always doing that as a child. I was mediating the fights and the arguments and trying to diffuse everything. So these skill sets of growing up in a traumatic environment worked really good at dealing with toxic work environments. However, as people are becoming more aware, they're having more self-worth, self-esteem, they don't want to tolerate a fucking toxic environment. This is why it is so important for change to start to happen, because these old approaches are not going to work if you want people to be in your companies and be able to be happy and productive, right? Sorry, Sook, any advice for me? I'm suffering for lack of confidence, especially facing high authority person. Yeah, facing poor communication skills. So facing high authority people, it can be really scary when that's the first time you're actually speaking up. Are there people that are not high authority that you can actually speak to with confidence, with no challenge? I'll give you a minute to type, but so I struggled with this, and I'm thinking back, failed the road test twice because of this. Okay, for not being able to speak. Okay, so what kind of thoughts are going through your head when you're going into the test? When an officer sits beside me, I get nervous. Okay. Yeah, from your childhood. Yeah. Yeah, and these kind of things, like, I'll give an example. So there was a manager that I worked with, and she was our customer, and I had to deal with her a lot. And I knew she didn't like me, so that was never a good thing. That always made me feel nervous and anxious. The next thing that would happen is she would always try to poke holes at me and pull me down. You're punished by a teacher for never asking by asking on them. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is so because of that past punishment, that ends up happening of that. If you don't look at those traumas and start looking at it, of what happened and how that could be different, then what ends up happening is you end up recreating that same situation, that they get frustrated. It's a matter of understanding. I knew that whenever I was dealing with this one manager, okay, I had to absolutely be prepared, because I knew she was deliberately trying to mess me up, and she was actually anticipating and waiting. It's like, oh, she's not going to have the right answer. And my way of dealing with that is I would do a deep dive on data and numbers that I knew she was going to question every little thing. And this took a little bit of time for me to end up earning her respect. But, and if I got upset about something, she felt validated. So this is another example of very narcissistic behavior. She delighted in the fact that she could throw me off emotionally. And then she used that as a weapon to say, this is why. Now, she was doing this also so that she could leverage that as a tactic to reduce rates. So it wasn't a personal attack. She was doing as a strategic thing to actually gain benefit so that she could look good getting better freight rates and beating us down. So this usually happened. And it took a bit before I clued into the pattern. They are doing that kind of behavior because they get something out of it. They are afraid. So because nobody would treat somebody like that unless they aren't afraid themselves, right? So there's love and there's fear. Love is the only thing that's real. Fear is false evidence appearing real. And so when people are acting badly and trying to deliberately trip you up, and they're doing it, let's say they're being malicious about it, and they want you to fail. They want you to fail, and they don't like you. They don't want you around. Like, get this friggin' person out of here. I've been able to win over their respect by taking away the personality of how the message is delivered and focusing only on the facts of the situation of, did I actually get the numbers right? Do they have a right to be pissed off? Because when I went through the numbers and I had a deep dive and I anticipated everything that she was going to actually ask, and she didn't have anything to go back on me, I actually ended up having her defend me in a team meeting that was between the two companies, and it had all our higher ups. She's like, no, if Tina says that it's not true, then it's not true. Why? Because I put in the work to prove that I actually knew what the hell I was talking about. But the first few times, I failed a few times with her, right? And I got tripped up and I got nervous and I got scared and I reacted to her aggressiveness, her style of leadership, because I hadn't recognized that she was acting out of fear. And it was only the stuff afterwards. The funny thing is, the really, really funny thing is this woman that belittled me so much. Karma has a way of doing stuff, right? So when I was in the mid-sized company, and I was just like, a little fish kind of thing, and she treated me so badly because she thought she was entitled to. And years later, I was at one of these Fortune 500 companies, and they actually had to negotiate rates with me. And I could see the fear in her face, and which was a little bit validating. I'm not going to lie, I'm human. But I could see the fear in her face because she knew she treated me badly. But now I'm in the position of authority. And she was like, oh, shit, this is not going to go well. The thing is I'm not an asshole. So I operate with a high level of integrity, and I actually, and I didn't even play around with it. I could have, but I could see by the end of the meeting when she saw that I actually didn't try to punish her for her behavior when I had the power to do so, she felt relieved, and she was actually like, she talked to me on the side and like told me an apology and stuff like that, and I was like, don't worry about it, it's all good, right? Because if you're in a place of love, you don't have to react, you don't have to lash out in fear, you don't have to do those kind of things. And when you see other people do that, it's easy to forgive if we're not in a fearful place ourselves. When we have the desire to punish other people for their wrongdoings, that's not how love works. Love doesn't keep any record of wrongs. And we just recognize that, oh, you know what, you are an illusion. That's not the right way to behave, right? And I know when I'm in a good place, I can see that other people's bad behavior has actually nothing to do with me. It has to do with their own fears, their own doubts, their own reactions, their own programming. Just like I know other people's behavior doesn't have anything to do with how I'm feeling. It has to do with my fears, my doubts, my reactions, my programming. And when I fix that, everything's good. I'm good. So you can actually change the world by doing the inner work. It's hard work though. Nobody wants to face that stuff. It's like, it's easier to point out the, speck of dust in somebody else's eye than the plank in your own, right? I'm pretty sure that's somewhere as a Bible quote. I'm sure my moderator can give me some guidance on that. So I want to talk about, I was, like I said, dealt with a lot of military guys and training and stuff like that throughout my logistics career. And there's real good benefits of the military stuff, of the structure, the SOPs, the process, the predictability. It gives you a sense of safety, security, all of that kind of stuff. I love that. However, I had somebody share with me just a small, little tiny speck of what they had to endure during their training and how they have to be conditioned. And so you can look at this as a love and a fear thing, right? They have to actually go through abuse to be able to tolerate it. Why? Because they're dealing with some pretty fucking bad people, and that's who they have to fight. So I'm glad that helps. Okay. So they need to be taught and they need to be shown these kind of ways in order to be able to survive. So while they have to be put through all of this abuse, and I know when the person told me that story, it brought up like this pain, this hurt, this anger, this rage. It's like I just wanted to protect them. And it's like it hurt me to hear that somebody hurt them in that way. And to them, they're coming from the perspective, it's like, yeah, but that's what made me strong. And I'm like, yeah, I get it, but they hurt you and I don't like that. Right? So it's funny because it's like, because I've done so much work on abuse and stuff like that, I can see their perspective, and it does, make you stronger and stuff like that, and what you have to go through. That's part of the training to be able to survive, because it's like, if they weren't conditioned in that way and you put them on the battlefield and your friend, your comrade beside you and ends up dying because you didn't have the ability to be hard with them in the training grounds, then it's on you that they died, right? So sometimes you have to hurt people in order to, that is a sign of love, right? So you end up having a different tolerance for forgiveness. However, you take that you come from that background, you forget that you've been conditioned for those kind of things. They forget how fucking elite they are, how amazing they are. And then they try to do that on civilians, and it's like, it doesn't go well, right? And you got a lot of casualties in the workforce because of that. So you have to have some sort of balance. You need this yin and yang kind of approach to be able to, because you can't baby them either, right? Like, you need to kind of lift them up and raise them up, but at the same time, knowing that they're going to be on that battlefield. So you need that cap, you need that harshness, that, better to be hard with them on the training grounds than, lose them on the battlefield. So, looking at my notes. Yeah, I think these other two. Yeah, these other ones, I think they're a little disconnected. I'm gonna save them for another day, so I can open it up. If anybody does have any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you. If not, we can wrap it up for today, and we can come back again tomorrow between 9 to 10 p.m. ish. That time. So hopefully, was this helpful? Did you guys find this helpful? Let me know if there's things, because and you might be wondering why, like, happiness coach, like, this doesn't make sense. Tina, you're talking about business, you're talking about trauma, like, how does this relate? Well, the thing is people don't realize that you're dealing with people and they may not look like they've been through trauma. I certainly didn't, but I react in certain ways, and having an understanding can help you mitigate some of the challenges, help you approach it without micromanaging, those kind of things, right? And being able to encourage and support them because when people are happy, they're most productive, right? When you are happy to come into work, it's a good environment, you feel supported, you're going to work whether that boss is there or not. You want to contribute to the growth of the company. So it is a win and a bonus for everybody around. But if you get that one person and it may not even be you, maybe you are great as a leader, but you don't realize somebody on your team is being picked on by somebody else, right? And you just expect that they should be able to stand up for themselves. But if they've come from an environment and they don't know how to set those boundaries, and you see that stuff happening, being able to help them and coach them rather than just expecting them, they should have those things already. Being able to identify those things helps you develop your people to a point that they're never going to want to leave, that their loyalty to you, even when you hit hard times, is going to be unmatched. They will stick with you no matter what, right? You be hard on them and they're only about the money. There's always another company that can pay them more money. There's always, do you want a mercenary or do you want a loyal servant on your team, right? Definitely loyal. So what does it mean when a leader can't delegate without micromanaging? Great question. I've been guilty of both. When I am in that micromanaging phase, I am in a fear state. Couple of reasons. One, either I don't know enough about the process and I feel like I should know, so I'll dive in and I'll start doing all the stuff and then I can delegate. So usually new leaders are not very good at delegating the tasks out because they're unsure. So they have fear. Right? If it's unsure, they're unknown, that they tend to take it all on themselves. They won't let it go. And they need to find that reassurance within themselves, however they need to do that. The other thing is, so when if you have a micromanaging leader and you want them to stop micromanaging you, then giving them reassurance, because everything is either, so fear, if somebody is acting out in fear, it's a cry for love. So they need reassurance. They need, care, understanding, all of that kind of stuff. So if you have somebody that's micromanaging and they're trying to get into your business and they won't leave you alone, they feel like you're going to let them down. They're afraid that you're going to not do the job, that you're not going to perform, and they're going to get in trouble, and they don't feel in control. So usually increasing the amount of communication that you have with them is how I've dealt with this, of by giving them, hey, you know what, these are the steps I'm doing, this is what and I would check in with them and I kind of give them that feedback to reassure them that they can trust that I will get the job done. Even if that meant staying late, even if that meant putting in extra hours, just like how I gained the trust of that manager from another company where she was actively trying to bring me down. But I refused to allow that because I actually knew what I was doing. It's only she screwed me up at the time because she made me feel anxious by being so aggressive about things. And I started to doubt, I started to fear my capabilities rather than it, because she would like kill a fly with a cannon kind of thing, right? So, and that was because she had fear, right? Once her fear was removed and she was reassured, and I corrected the problems, because I'm not saying that we didn't have problems on our side, that when I focused on fixing the actual problem and not reacting to the personality of it, they could relax, they could let go of the grip. So if somebody is micromanaging, they are trying to control because they are in a state of fear. Helping reassure them of that, whether you have to give them additional communication or explain things in a way to let them know that there's trust there. Now, as a leader, you can't always know all of the details. So being able to communicate clearly is very, very important, because otherwise what ends up happening, and it's a two-way street, right? So if I'm the micromanager and I'm feeling like I just have to, you know what? And women are a little bit more prone to this than men. Men will let you sink. It's like, figure out how to swim. I don't fucking care, right? Women will jump in and it's like, here, let me do it, right? They tend to be a little bit more conditioned to be that way. And I have been guilty of that as well. Newsflash, woman. So I've been guilty of jumping in, trying to figure things out. And it's because I want things to go smoothly, but I can't always do all of that stuff. So getting better at being clear about what I need to feel like things are going to be done in the way that they need to be done. Am I clearly communicating the goals and the objectives for the person and the timelines that are required, right? And being able to have certain checkpoints to make sure that we're on track to hit that target, right? So it's not so much a micromanaging, and reassuring the person, because the thing is people pick up on energy too. So if you've assigned something to somebody that you don't really think that they can do it, and you're like, oh, I really don't think that they can do it. Even if you don't say anything, even if you tell them, you know what, oh yeah, you can do it. You're gaslighting them, because you're not being authentic. It is much better to say, you know what, I'm really concerned that we're not going to hit the timeline, and here's why I'm concerned, right? If they are a good-hearted person, a good-hearted employee, and you express that and say, you know what, I'm really going to need a lot more communication. I don't want to screw this up. This is really important. This is what we need to do. You're expressing how you're feeling. You're expressing your fear. It doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you much stronger. And if they're a good employee, a good person, they're going to want to try and help you with that. But if you don't communicate that to them, they don't know it. They just feel this anxiety that you have, that you're fearful about it, you're hiding it, and maybe they start to get fearful about it, but they don't know why. I've been guilty of that because I'm an empath and I pick up other people's emotions, where I'll start to be anxious about stuff where I'm like, okay, I know I can do this, but why am I being anxious? It's like, do they not think that I can do this? Maybe I can't do this. Maybe they don't think I can do this. And that fear and doubt now gets transferred from the leader to the employee. And that's not a good thing. So this is why it's so important for us to do the inner work, because if we don't clear our side of the street, that energy, that fear within us actually gets transferred. But if you have more of a team environment that is where, you know what, shit's going to go wrong, stuff's going to blow up around us, but you know what, I've got your back, I believe in you, I know that even if it fucks up, we're going to figure it out together. That will convey so much more loyalty, so much more, like people are going to work twice as hard for that kind of manager as the one, it's like, here you go, let's see if you fuck this up, how quick, right? That kind of manager is like, you know, some people will rise to the challenge, and some people are like, you know, really competitive, and they're like, yeah, there you go, fucker, I did it, right? Sorry, I'm channeling my transportation work voice, so I'm swearing a bit. I used to make truckers blush, in case you didn't know. So, a little bit competitive, had to one-up them, you know. So does that help, Mark, of being able to explain how love and fear work in work environments? It's not just a crunchy granola thing. It's not just a woo-woo spiritual stuff. These have practical applications. These spiritual kind of teachings have practical applications that are actually very profitable in the workplace if you guys start to implement them. So, and having your team, having your managers understand this stuff, having them be able to do that inner work and be self-aware, because a lot of times, even managers that are good-natured, if they're not self-aware, they haven't done the inner work, they unintentionally can harm people on their team, because maybe they're hiding those fears, those anxieties, because they really want to do a good job, but you know, they're trying to get in there and micromanage, and they don't want to give things up, and they're trying to do it all themselves. Totally been guilty of that. Totally been guilty of that. And so another thing of why micromanaging can happen as well is I was in an environment where I knew the people that were around to help me were not at the level that they could handle that. They hadn't been up to that training level yet. So sometimes you have to step in and do that. And I knew if I put them in that situation, because I was getting thrown in and I was actually really skilled. I was getting thrown in and these guys were toxic as fuck. And I was having to deal with it, and it brought up all kinds of trigger stuff for me. And so even though I needed help, and even though I knew I should have asked for help, I did not want to endanger my team by putting them into that toxic environment, even though they were all eager to help. So this can be another thing that is a flag of, if you have somebody that is really, really good and they're not letting go of stuff, maybe they're doing it so that they're trying to protect their team. And I know my manager, she was amazing and I loved her. And there were times that she wouldn't let go of stuff either. Why? Because she knew what was going on behind the curtain, and she knew what kind of assholes she was dealing with, right? So not all the time, but that toxic behavior of, you know, sometimes there were political things that were going on in the company, had nothing to do with the employees, but sometimes, you know, one VP was trying to stick it to another VP, and sometimes people on the team were used as pawns, and that creates a hugely friggin' toxic environment. And this stuff can go on in your business without you knowing, and the bigger you grow, the more that this stuff can happen. And maybe you trust the person that's reporting into you, and they're feeding you all kinds of lies and bullshit, and you don't know. So you start looking at some of the other people as negative, and that can be another way of toxic. So that kind of narcissism can end up showing up because they're doing the cover your ass kind of thing, right? And if you don't have that kind of open environment where people can freely talk about how they messed up, and knowing that you will have their back, that is a top-down leadership model. If people aren't opening up and then you find out that lies were done and the truth wasn't being reported to you, you've got a toxicity issue in your company. If you have people that were good, that were performing well, and all of a sudden they're gone, you have a toxicity issue in your company, and it's costing you money. And the more, you can keep trying to replace people, you can keep trying to say that they're not doing a good job, maybe we need more SOPs, maybe we need more structure, maybe that's the case. But if it still keeps happening, you have to start looking at the emotional component of it and being able to start helping people understand their selves first, because all the leaders have to do that inner work. And I was with a company that did a huge culture change thing, and all the leaders had to start doing inner work. Why? Because guess what? The new graduates didn't want it. They'd come for their apprenticeship and then they didn't want to stay with the company. They were like, yeah, thanks for the lessons learning. There's no way in hell I want to work for this environment, right? Because of seeing some of those toxic behaviors that end up happening. So there has to be a balance. Yes, you need structure. Yes, you need processes. Yes, you need systems to be able to put in place. But at the end of the day, it is the people that matter the most, because your entire business relies on solving problems for people. If you don't treat your internal employees correctly, then they will not treat your customers correctly. They will not provide the service that those customers are hoping for. They will cause all kinds of problems in your business, and you will feel like it's always shifting sands. And whether or not you change or adapt will determine whether or not you actually can continue to grow your business. So starting to learn how to create an environment, and I think this is one of the ways that I think is going to really help me hit that goal of helping 1 million people heal past trauma, because the work environment is where we often spend a great chunk of our time. Oftentimes you spend more time with your work family than you do your real family, and that becomes a huge problem, right? So if your work family is not healthy, is not emotionally regulated and balanced, then there's going to be all kinds of problems that are going to be carried home to the home environment. And then the next generation is affected over and over and over again. So this is possible to heal. It's not easy to heal, but it is definitely worth it. And happier people are more productive. And I think all businesses should try to find a way to make healthy profitable. And I'm not just talking healthy profits. I'm talking about emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, having all of those as a strong 4 pillars of being able to grow your business and help your people within your teams be proud of the company that they're working for, be proud of and dedicated to the company that they're working for, that you have and attract the best people, and you don't have a high turnover rate. You're not always having to hire unless you're growing, right? If you're having to hire to replace, and you're having to do that quite a bit, because that's another thing. If your company isn't growing, and that was one of the challenges at the company that I had, that I was at, it was great. We gave top performance. We developed them and everything, but the problem is they had no place to grow. So when you have good, strong people and you don't have a place for them to grow, or you're not growing your business at a pace that's fast enough, those strong people are going to get bored. They're going to get irritated. They could start to become a problem. They could start to become the toxicity within the company, because they're not stimulated enough to keep them growing. So then the only other option is to, they start getting bored. They start, maybe being aggressive with other people, or, if somebody else gets that promotion over them, they might be aggressive with them and stuff like that, or get their nose out of joint. And now you have a whole toxic thing that's happening. and then eventually that person ends up leaving. So you lose that talent, and usually, you know, there's some sort of fallout from that. So you don't want that. You want to heal, have a healthy work environment, help people within your team grow and become aware of these things. It'll help them as a person. It's going to help affect their family, and it'll have a ripple effect on. Looks like the cat's knocked something over, and I will probably take that as a cue as it's time to wrap up for today. So guys, I really hope that was helpful and useful information. Please, if you have any questions, come back tomorrow, like, comment, subscribe. I have a YouTube channel now. I am posting the videos up there. So go over to my YouTube. If you like and subscribe to it, you'll get, if you miss part of it, you can watch the replays, and you can also, you know, go back, take notes, argue with me if you feel that something is not correct. Please, I invite those kind of things. If you're like, yeah, but what about this kind of situation? Bring that to me. Bring it, bring it, bring it. I love it. And we'll talk about it, and we'll figure it out, and I'll show you live examples of how we can work this out. All right, guys, so have a great night, and we will see you again tomorrow. Bye.